there and welcome to another Dave Does video, and today we are doing a Dave Does review, and we are reviewing The Warnings Queen of the Murder Scenes album. Now before I get started into that, if you're expecting me to review track by track, listening to each song on the album, listen to the album in full, that won't be happening in this review. If you want to know what I thought about the initial songs, you can check out each individual reaction, because I've reacted to every song on this album. And I think it's important to understand the difference between a reaction and a review. So we're going to cover that quickly, so just so you know what I'm kind of covering. So a reaction for me is where you have no concept, no guidance whatsoever about the music. It's your first impression. So you have literally the 3-4 minutes of that song with no lyrics, nothing. You have nothing to go by, and that's just your gut feeling. Whereas a review, you take more time. You are actually spending time listening to the song on repeat. So you must listen to it several times. You go through the lyrics, you understand a little bit more history about the album, and so you get more of a feel of it, and then you can make a more of an informed decision. So that's the difference between a reaction and a review for me, and that's what is quite important, where people ask me to do a reaction and sort of say you didn't get it, you didn't understand the story behind it, and I'm like, well, probably didn't, because it's a reaction, not a review. And so this today is a review where I've spent a lot more time, and I want to give you an idea of what I've spent. So I've listened to this album now from track 1 through to the end, track 1 to the end on repeat now for 3 days. So I think I've listened to the album about 30 odd times. So I've taken it very seriously, and obviously then I've gone down through the lyrics. And I'm not going to delve into the lyrics too much. I think everyone knows what the lyrics are. They know the story behind it. But obviously I'll cover a little bit of that as well in the review. A couple of other bits before I go into track by track and my thoughts about the album. So the other thing I wanted to think about was, there were certain things I took into consideration when to think about the album, was the types of people that get into songs and what you're looking for in music, because not everyone wants the same thing in music. So me, for years playing in bands, I was the drummer. But I'd also write songs, but I would write the music. I never once wrote a lyric for any song. That was always the vocalist's job. So I would write music, write guitar parts, put them all together, and I was always about the vibe and the feel of the music. And then I would hand it over. And even now, if someone was to ask me, let's say there's a song called Hollow Rhetoric we did on the Nothing Gained album, or sorry, Holes in Faith on the Hollow Rhetoric album, but I couldn't even tell you what the song's about. I could probably sing the lyrics, but I still couldn't tell you what the song's about, because I never went into that level of detail. I was just the drummer in the band, and we wrote music. But so I'm very much a vibe person. There are other people that take forever to look at lyrics. There are many bands that I really love, and I still have no idea what the songs are about, but I still love the songs. I can even sing along to the songs, but still don't understand what the songs are about, because I'm more about the vibe. And so that's why it's always a bit of an interesting one when we do reactions to songs where we talk about, people go on about the lyrics and the deeper meaning, because it's not what connects to me to a song. I'm more about the music and the vibe versus the meaning behind the song. So that's just from my point of view of what I start to look at, and that's why you'll probably find with some of my reactions, they are very much about the feel of the song and the musicality of the song versus the lyrics and the meaning, because that's something I think you have to take your time for. Obviously, I've said I've reacted to all songs already. I'm going to go track by track through each of the songs. There's a couple of things I'm going to talk about in here, which I've covered a little bit in the reaction. So we talk about vocal technique, and obviously their age when they recorded the album. So there is a couple of things that they did, and it's interesting to listen to the album. Some of the things that I said in my reactions about vocal technique, I can now accept. We talked about they were obviously playing characters, and I get that. There is one thing that they do, and both Pao and Danny both do it, and if you even watch some reactions by vocal coaches, they pick this up as well, and it's about pushing too much power. So there's a couple of bits, and I think they do it on... So I'm looking down my notes here, because I made a lot of notes. So a good example of that is on the actual song Crimson Queen. And Danny really at one point on certain songs, or certain elements of that song, pushes with so much power. Now you could say she's in character, but actually that's quite damaging. It can be quite damaging to your vocals, and is not really required for that song. When I listened to the song, it sounded like you're almost shouting. but it only happens on a couple of songs from here or there. And the reason why that technique sometimes is used is the best way to think about it is if you're driving a car and you want to use all the different gears. So and the voices are lots of different gears. You've got lots of voice tones, etc. Different gear. If you're trying to go in sixth gear and you're idling over, you're going to stall. So you have to give it more revs. You have to give it more power. And that's exactly what they're doing with the vocal. So what they tend to say is if you're struggling for a certain note, a vocal technique says if you're struggling to hold a certain note, you need to give it a little bit more power. So sometimes when they're trying to get a high note and they know that they're not getting cut through it, they push and push and push and put more power behind it, i.e. put the accelerator full down. Problem with that is it can give you an extreme, to hit that note, you get this extreme volume change, and it's not always great to have. And there was only a couple of times, and it's something I'm kind of like okay with now. And you could say it's because they're trying to play a character. I actually think it's down more to technique that was trained into them, and it'll be interesting to see how on a new album if that changes in any way. But it's only on a couple of songs and I'm not really going to delve into those, and it doesn't change my thought of or view of the album as a whole. Other things I talked about on here, so obviously it's a concept album, and I think it's important to understand the difference between obviously people writing a normal album where they've just written a series of songs, and every album will have some sort of story behind it, whether the story is come up with after the fact, which it does in a lot of cases. They'll have a series of songs written and then we'll write lyrics and then start to build a story for the album or a concept for the album. But it may not have a story, a narrative, if you like, from start to finish. Whereas of this one, obviously, it has a very clear narrative from start to the finish of the album. And that one thing that does make it a little bit more challenging is certain songs may not be instantly accessible. So what you're not tending to write on a concept album is a commercial hit. You're not looking for your single. You can hear the albums where they've written 8 or 9 songs where it's all just commercial hits. They're just going for the singles, the videos, the releases. And when you listen to those albums back to back, they're the sort of albums you can dip into. You can dip into one song here, one song there, and it's fine. The concept album is very much a start to finish piece. You can dip into the songs, but they don't necessarily stand up as well as an album that's been written specifically for commercial releases in mind, or an individual track album, if you like. And that was kind of for me where the other type of concept album is the ones where the tracks naturally flow. So there is no breaks in the album. There's a few bands that do it, like you had Marillion's Misplaced Childhood. That literally starts at the beginning, ends at the end, and there's no break of music at all. So each song flows and you listen to it as a huge piece of music. You can listen to each part on its own, but that one is very much a case of you listen to that as one whole album from start to finish to get the overall feel. This one you can break it down into sections as well, so you don't necessarily need to do it that way. I saw a few comments about it with other people's reviews where they talk about where the Warning doesn't have a formula. Unfortunately, yes, they do. They have got a formula in how they write their songs. If you listen to the album and break it down, they have a habit of loving to do drum build-ups. So, dun, 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 dun. Either a kick drum or a tom or very low tempo and building up into a small pre-chorus. And then basically big open chord choruses, and they're very much into the pop rock chorus styles with chords, their standard chord changes. But if you go through the songs, almost all of them have that build-up structure. And actually, it's very theatrical, so it makes sense from the concept of the album. But with writing of the sound, when someone says that there isn't any form of formula, there was very much, but that again, this is not a negative. This is actually just an observation. Most people will have a formula. If you don't have a formula, you tend to find that, or you don't use any sort of structure or formula when writing a song, your song will be all over the place and people find it less accessible. So using a formula means it's more accessible to the listeners. Okay, almost getting to there. I'm almost getting to the track by track breakdown. Flow of the album, I've kind of talked about, but yeah, I kind of, when you listen to song by song, one after the other, the gap in between or going from a mellow song into a hard song means that it doesn't feel like a natural transition. And the best way I could think about it, I was sitting there, I think probably on my 5th or 6th listen to, and I was trying to think about it in the car. I was driving, listening to the songs, and it made me think that it almost needs a narrative of a stage show performance. So something like, I made a few notes of different music, things like Chicago, Tommy, Little Shop of Horrors, all these sort of films were basically, or stage shows, where you've got an onstage performance of actors doing a scene, and then it cuts to a musical number. And this is where I felt the Queen of the Murder Scene album really sort of fitted in for me. Was you could have it almost being Dust to Dust starts it off, and then they fade off out, and then the actors come on, do a bit of a scene, and then they're into the Crimson Queen number comes on. And it could be the stage show performers are actually singing it with that music, and then it goes fades off again, does another scene. So it feels like these are the numbers that tie the whole stage performance together. But you need that visualization at a stage show performance to really bring it all together, because those gaps in between it just feels there's a transitional element that's missing for me, but just needs that visualization. Before I get to the pros and cons, let's go through the track by track listing. So I'm not going to go into massive detail on each song because I've talked about it in my reactions, but it'll be interesting to see. I can't remember what I said in my reactions to some of these songs, so I've done this purely on my news, so you guys will probably know what I did a set in my reactions. I do too many videos to know. But let's start it off, Dust to Dust. So I've kind of written down here, and I will have to look down because I write a lot of notes for different songs. So really cool eerie intro. Has that kind of Arabian Nights kind of cool riff and a real nice low groove to the song, so it kind of gets you and brings you gently in a way to the album, whilst kind of getting you that sinister vibe a little bit going on there. I think that what I liked about this song was it had a riff in there. The main, or the kind of core Arabian Nights riff is very similar to a riff we used on a song called Paper Thin by Nothing Gained. It's like our main riff for our verses. If you want to go check it out, type in Paper Thin, Nothing Gained. I'm not claiming any sort of copying or anything like that, because it's just a very standardised sort of common like Arabian Nights riff. But I think that's what kind of instantly connected me with that song when I first heard it. It kind of made me go, "Ooh." Ears pricked up a little bit. So that's very cool, nice intro to it. We'll go into Crimson Queen, which has got more of like a little country twang to the style. It's got a really well controlled emotion over her voice, well written lyrics, very nice storytelling throughout the song. Also has a really nice music from the musical accompaniment. It's got some really nice layering of instrumentation throughout. It's the first track that I sort of mentioned where you hear Danny really push hard on the vocal. Probably on that chorus where she's pushing that really hard, I actually would have probably brought that all down. I don't think it needs that intensity to be as high as it was there. I'd have liked it to be a bit more sad, sinister, I don't know, rather than being quite as intense as it was. But that's a personal thought, but still a really nice track, really great track to kind of bring you into the second song. We then get to Ugh. I've kind of said it's a mix of the 70s and the 2000s. It's got the 70s rock and the early 2000s rock, where there was a bit of a resurgence vibe to it. But it's also got elements of like funk in it, which is very cool. Personally, I think the album version of this track is better than the live performance that I've seen. I think a lot of that turns down to the fact that vocally it's quite a challenging vocal song, and even on the album you can hear still little bits of the vocals that are a little bit strained at points. It's got good vocal control, but you can just hear there's certain elements where it's not quite smooth as you would probably want with multiple layering or technique, etc. What have I written here? Great. Oh, great! Oh God, my writing's atrocious. But great hard groove and a good rock out track. So it's a great little song. Again, so we then go into the one. It's a somber opener, building with intensity in line with the emotions of the character. Launching into a pop rock chorus, almost anthemic in nature. Love the use of the piano to add texture. I thought that was really nice. So that, again, one of the things with the albums is the layering and texturing of certain songs. I think they've done really, really well. Stalker, we've got a sad intro here, good vocal emotional control that stands out over the live performances. So again, it's one of those ones where I think the albums stands out better. Some people prefer the live. In me, this one was definitely better on the album than it was live. Launching into another pop rock chorus. So again, if you actually start going through the songs and trying to think of them from a musical rather than a lyrical or vocal standpoint, there is definitely some correlation into how they put their musical tracks together. But again, you're going into a pop rock chorus, great vocal intensity, and again, I like how the intensity of the song through the Stalker, the voice increases. So you can feel the emotional increase as the song progresses through. Red Hands Never Fade, high octane driven rock track, hooky vocal lines, early to kind of 2000s vibe to it. It's one of probably musically, it's one of the more easily accessible to the first time listener for me. And there's certain ones here that, as I said, they've got their. This one's got almost a commercial vibe to it, so this one makes it a little bit more accessible. Whereas some of the other ones, like Stalker, The One, they're going to be ones where if you're a first time listener, you're not going to be quite sure. You're going to be kind of borderline on the fence until you kind of take the time to listen to the album. Okay. We've got The Sacrifice, a suspense building up intro into a pop rock chorus. You heard me say that a few more times, I'm sure. So again, build up into pop rock, build up into pop rock. There's quite a bit of that in the album. But it's one of the best songs for vocal harmonies I've heard. So some really nice harmonisations from the three girls in how they perform together. Really nice layering and really nice accenting on certain points. Sinister Smiles, 70s rock vibe from the intro. Nice layering and introduction of instruments. So I like where instruments are just slowly layered in and brought in as the song progresses. So it's just building up those layers of music to get to that chorus. It's got kind of a blues rock chorus, less pop in this one. There's almost a grungy element to this particular song, which I think is kind of cool, which is quite different from the rest of the songs on the album. So that's the kind of the first one where we've got less pop rock and went more kind of into a different style, which is cool. Now, Dull Knives. So this is the one where I kind of sort of said this was a filler, and I wouldn't call it a filler now. It definitely has its element of the album, but I think I know why I called it a filler. And the reason is each song on the album feels like it's part of a stage show soundtrack. It feels like it's part of a storytelling. Whereas Dull Knives feels more like it's a commercial rock song. It feels more like it's a single. So although it's a good song, it doesn't have the kind of same intensity twist, storytelling nature that the others do. And I'll go through what my thought was here when I was going through the lyrics as well. So for me, straight out rock track, building into a hard rock chorus, has a real kind of classic pre-chorus transition. So there's a lot of kind of formulaic sort of styles of what you kind of expect from classic rock. A huge chorus sound, stands out as a single but lacks the link between lyrics and music. So what for me was the lyrics are really sinister. Talks about dull knives are better and all these sort of things. But the music is almost, for the most part, quite happy and upbeat. So the two don't quite naturally go, which is where I was saying it's a very commercial rock. The only time it kind of gets more sinister musically is when you get to the outro, where it then becomes more kind of chaotic, more intense and more sinister at that point. But that's sorry, I'm coming down with a cold today. But yeah, that's possibly where I was saying it was more filler compared to the rest of the songs on the album, which were more storytelling. This one just felt more like a commercial rock track to me. Okay, now we get to Queen of the Murder Scene. So this one is a real kind of bluesy groove to me. Almost has a TV horror show feel, if you like. It's performed almost like it was done in a stage show, like Phantom of the Opera, specifically with the guitar and the vocal lines following each other. So that's kind of cool. It's very different from anything else, again, on the album so far. And although it's not a kind of standout commercial track, it's probably a standout track for individuality from this album. Then we get to one of my favourite tracks, so Psychotic. Very punk, pop, rock, lots of energy. Got that cool slow build up into a high energy chorus. Really helps engage the listener. Very hooky and great gang vocals with the other girls. So it's just a great fun track. And again, very easily accessible to the listeners. So I did find that the last 4 tracks were the more accessible in general. Or the last 3 tracks, to be honest, Psychotic, Hunter in the end. But Queen of the Murder Scenes, as I said, is not the most accessible track straight away. But those last 3, or the last 3, are definitely the more accessible. So we get to that. Hunter, I've written down the Munsters, Addams Family, bebop groove. It's different, it's fun. It does have a horror movie theme tune. It's for like a TV show type thing. Like, it's just a fun riff. It's definitely one of the strongest tracks. It's got sinister vocals on it, which is fun. Has a strong track with real commercial tones to that one. So this is one of those ones you could play it and people would like it just because it's fun. And then finally we get to the end. It's a beautifully structured classic rock ballad full of emotion and a great way to end the album. And I would say, I mean, looking through the album, Sinister Smiles, Psychotic Hunter, The End, and probably Red Hands Never Fade are probably my favourite tracks out there. Although there isn't a song on there that I don't really like, I would probably say out of the songs that is probably my least favourite is probably Queen of the Murder Scene. Is actually my least favourite, mainly because I'm not a fan of vocals and lead guitar lines following each other. It just sends me up the wrong way. I guess when we write songs, we might use a guitar line to set the vocal line up when we're trying to come up with a vocal line, but then we'll always remove that guitar afterwards and then have the kind of chord so we haven't got too much frequencies bash into each other. So that's probably my only reason why that doesn't sit as well with me. So what have we got here? So we've got the pros and cons. They're going to come up on the screen, but basically pros for me are the songs are really well structured. We have great storytelling throughout the whole album, so it's got a nice natural progression through the album. Lots of energy, where even on the slower tracks the vocal energy comes through really, really well. I think the cons for me is, I think to appreciate the album, the songs, it requires time. They're not the most easy to fully engage with on first time listens. There's a few bits around vocal control points were not amazing, but they're not bad either. So I think there's just a couple of bits where obviously that pushing through, if you know what you're listening for from a vocal point of view, you can kind of hear that, and you know that they shouldn't be pushing as hard as that. And then I just talked about flow from track to track musically, not as a natural smooth transition. It doesn't feel like the songs were, that they don't naturally progress into each other musically. Vocally, as far as the lyrics and what they're talking about, yes, they do. But there is a difference in them, and that's what I was talked about that whole. It feels like it should be a stage show with a live performance of actors in between each song to kind of to bridge each of the songs. So, in summary, Queen of the Murder Scene is the sort of album that on first listening you hear that there is something there that makes you want to go down the rabbit hole and into Wonderland. For those that do, it's quite an adventure. So that is it. That is my review of The Warning. I'm glad that I've done it. I actually really like it, and I was actually working yesterday on a job, just walking around in the garden, just singing along into my head, go den. It's taken over my brain after 30 listens, and I'm actually going to probably play it in the car today as I go out to do some more work. So yeah, should be fun to do. Now, if you like this video, please do subscribe, click the bell icon, like, share, leave the comments down below. Let me know in the comments below what album you think I should do a full review of for June. I'm going to be doing one album review per month. And we'll get some ideas together, and we'll throw it out to the people in YouTube and Instagram and Twitter or whatever else I'm supposedly on, Facebook, etc., and see what you guys want me to go and do a full breakdown review of. Thank you very much for watching, and that, of course, is how Dave does it.